The system announces that the king who unified the 8 kingdoms has now ascended to the throne of souls. Offering its congratulations, the system will deliver your rewards when you meet the necessary conditions. A memory emerges of an excited boy who claims to have completed the level, but suddenly he's attacked by someone calling him an insect. The assailant says that his heresy makes him unworthy of a king, and he deserves punishment. In a hospital, doctors are in a panic because a man's heartbeat has stopped, and they urgently call for cardiac resuscitation. As they begin CPR, something flashes in the boy's vision, startling him awake. He looks around in fear and confusion, wondering what happened. He recalls being stabbed, but now where is he? Looking down, he's shocked to see a pile of corpses beneath him. Realizing he's standing on top of the heap, he thinks he's in hell and questions how he, a generally good person, ended up there. His head throbs as if it's going to explode, and he screams, demanding to know why he can't remember anything. But then, memories start to return. His name is Bai Ki. He was 20 years old before he died and was a little-known game streamer. He began gaining fame through a game called Throne of Souls, a medieval fantasy game where an alien spacecraft crash caused a fusion of fantasy and futuristic elements, earning high praise from its players. As they reached high levels, many players streamed their struggles and deaths, but the protagonist had no such problem because he was exceptionally skilled. A system voice informs him that even though he died, he has been reborn, and asks if the side effects of rebirth have worn off. Bai looks back to see who's speaking, recognizing the familiar voice. The voice explains that from a higher perspective, each game creates its own world. It informs him that his death was the special condition required to obtain the key, the rebirth, and that's why he can reincarnate in the game world, but Bai is confused. He thinks that his special reward was the chance to be reborn, but he doesn't even know how he died. He asks the system to wait, yelling and asking why he couldn't be reborn in a game with bikini girls instead of the hellish Throne of Souls. The system informs him that the key only works for this game and other games don't have that feature. But skeptically, Bai remarks that the system doesn't seem all that sad about it and that a game like this would never give something away for free, so it should just tell him the truth. The voice says he just needs to sit on the Throne of Souls again to receive the key for time travel, which will let him travel to other worlds. Bai protests, saying it's nearly impossible to achieve that goal, as even the weakest monsters would kill him, and there's no infinite respawn mechanic. The system agrees but suggests that through missions and tasks, he can acquire skills from 100 games he platinumed, and now Bai seems interested. He thinks about how he has completed every type of game and genre, and using those skills in this current game is intriguing. The system's voice tells him he can be a normal human if he wants. Bai finds this option odd, wondering if it's a trick to get him excited. He replies that he spent 20 years as a normal human and asks if there's a time limit to complete the story. The system denies it and asks if he wants to follow the main path and become a king. Bai, now excited, agrees. The system wishes him good luck on his journey to ascension. He then hears someone calling him. As he opens his eyes, a shadowy figure above him asks if he's reborn. An elf girl named Glory asks him to help them before the monsters return. A man named Hashi shouts that this cowardly boy won't be of any use, and says if they hadn't been betrayed, they wouldn't be in this mess. The tiger furry Dabu says it doesn't matter anymore because they're all going to die anyway. The girl Mina, a somewhat dubious priestess, stays silent, but the protagonist recognizes these names. He remembers they're the NPCs from the beginning of the story, and the cave they're in, the Howling Cave, is the starting map. He realizes that if he had been reborn as a normal human, he'd already be dead. But it makes sense that the system would do something like this to him. Bai Ki thinks the sequence is completely scrambled. He should have respawned in the starting area, Kafranka, for level 1 to 10 players. From there, he should have moved on to the Berg Jungle for levels 10 to 20, only then coming to the Howling Cave. But it's better he chooses his starting class. The system initiates the class selection and asks which one he chooses. Warrior, a melee combat class; Mage, a long-range class; Assassin, a versatile class with both long and short-range attacks; Hunter, a melee and long-range class with the ability to self-buff or no class; a despised player class with no additional attributes. The protagonist, however, says without hesitation that he's going to choose no class like he did last time. The system is surprised, expecting him to pick a different class. Bai explains that the other classes have their own special items, but the no class is the most challenging to survive with. However, it allows him to increase his attributes and switch classes without issues. He adds that even though it's the hardest, it's also the one with the highest reward potential, and it lets him acquire everything from other classes without creating a new character. The system understands and agrees that it's fitting for the best player. The main mission is updated, which is to reach the exit of the cave alive, with the reward being 1 account unlock point. It can be used to unlock 25% of an item or 25% of a new game account. Falling to the ground, Bai considers his goal. The elf girl shouts for him to untie the ropes tied to the rock to free them. The protagonist stands before the ropes, and they yell at him to hurry. He begins to wonder what to do. They thank him, but the knight tells him there's no time and asks Glory to wake the princess. Glory smiles, but suddenly she's struck, thrown against the wall, shocking the others. The level 30 leader of the Plague Clan asks who gave permission for his food to escape. He intends to kill everyone there, and the protagonist realizes that if he unties them, the battle with the cave boss will start, and he knows he'd die. So he scowls and thinks he needs to get out to claim his reward first. Their lives aren't his priority. He turns his back on the ropes, confusing the elf, who shouts, asking what he's planning to do. Hoshi says he's just a scared, no-class kid and won't get out of there alive. The protagonist knows nothing he says will earn their trust, but he knows the right time to act is coming. He then encounters a level 5 Plague Clan hatchling, which upon seeing the protagonist goes into attack mode. Hoshi says there's no way he can win. The monster charges with angry grunts, and Bae thinks he'll survive, even if defeating a level 5 monster at his current level is difficult. The monster attacks, and he does a Dark Souls-style roll, thinking it's not impossible. Attacking again, the protagonist dodges with another roll, taking no damage. The group watches and Hoshi calls him lucky, but the elf says his dodges were perfect, timed just right. Our hero thinks his moves are lag-free and confidently declares he might lack stats but has plenty of experience. The enemy throws a bomb, exploding on top of the protagonist, and the monster laughs. But from the flames of the explosion, our hero lunges at the monster, hitting it in the head, taking a chunk of its health. Tired and with his health running low, Bai Kai decides to end the fight now. The monster roars as it charges toward him, but its health is nearly depleted. So the protagonist delivers a blow to its head, twisting it and draining all its life points. Impressed, the trapped group praises the protagonist's skill. Bae thinks his weapons and attributes are very weak, and it's because he chose no class. He knows he should avoid unnecessary battles for now. The system informs him that he's received 100 soul points, 2 gold coins, and the broken mace item, which increases his damage to 5. Checking his status window, he sees it's a mess and that he's far from leveling up. As he prepares to leave, the group shouts for him to help them and promises a substantial reward in gold. The respectful priestess tells them to stop, saying that because they are weak, they deserve to die. She tells the protagonist that she respects his choice and advises him to be careful, and Bai responds that with her calm demeanor, she truly deserves to be a princess of the Stellar Kingdom. Our protagonist says that he's always had the plan to return and save them even if they don't believe him, which surprises them. The night Hoshi insults him, the princess tells him to stop talking and find a way out of the ropes. Bai, the silly one, thinks that in the original story they free themselves without him, but he loses the chance to gain rewards from the princess. He knows that his own survival is currently more important than making allies. He knows this cave like the back of his hand and says it has many valuable secrets, including a path with fewer enemies. But he admits he also needs to meet a specific character. A jar begins to call out to him with someone inside saying they've been stuck in there. The person says they entered the cave looking for treasure and ended up hiding there, advising Bai to take advantage of the lack of monsters to break the jar. Bai strikes the jar, shattering it in one blow. The level 27 Lucy emerges from the jar, saying he owes the protagonist and asks if he needs anything. Bai explains that his friends are captured by beasts and need help, and Luxi tells him to go ahead. As they walk, they encounter one of the monsters, an adult from the level 18 Plague Clan, who lunges at them with his hammer. Luxi takes the blow, losing some health, and accuses the monster of being the one who trapped him in the jar. He then strikes the monster with his sword, slashing its belly and taking away half of its life, remarking that he almost died in there. He then finishes it off, removing all its life and beheading it, earning the protagonist praise for his skill. Luxi explains that he trusts his abilities, which is why he came to help. Reaching a chasm, Bai says he heard his friends' voices in that area. He notes that he doesn't know how long they can hold on and suggests they go save them quickly. But Luxi says it's easy and kicks the protagonist off the cliff, solving the problem. Bai screams as he falls into the ravine. Luxi remarks that he can't help pushing someone standing on the edge of a cliff, confident that Bai would survive the push because he noticed he was a reborn. Down below, the protagonist asks how he knew, and Luxi is utterly confused, asking how he survived, saying that without his push, Bai would be long dead. Bai admits the pain is immense, but at least he knows what items he'll find down here. He discovers a bauble of bloody soul and a fragment of a glowing stone. Luxi regrets not stabbing him instead of just pushing him. But since Bai is stuck in the chasm, he'll just wish for his death. Bai already knew about Luxi's personality, but never knew about the Reborn or this game mechanic. The system informs him that much of this information is locked, but Reborn are people who came back to life under certain conditions. The protagonist knows he'll learn more about it later and should keep this information hidden, but he decides to set it aside for now and then picks up a glowing stone. He thinks he needs to be cautious and gather his strength because the real danger hasn't even started yet, and he arrives at the secret area of the Howling Cave, the Lost Ruins. In the open-world game our protagonist played, it was necessary to find clues, monsters, bosses, and ruins to discover the truth of this world, but he already knows everything because he platinumed the game. At the heart of this world, there's a crystal called the Soul of the World, where all races lived in harmony under its protection. But one day, an alien spaceship crashed into this world, coincidentally landing right where the soul of the world was located, destroying the entire foundation of this world. Despite what seemed like the end of the world, it wasn't. There was adaptation, giving rise to new species and civilizations, and where he is now is an underground civilization. There's an exit in a river known to the protagonist, which he says makes his life easier as he won't have to leave through the conventional entrance. Though there are no monsters, he needs to be careful not to fall onto the spikes on the walls. He then jumps, knowing from his experience gathered through multiple deaths in that area that reaching the bottom shouldn't be a problem. But he also notes that the deeper it goes, the tighter it gets, so he must be cautious, and then he slips, but ends up landing safely on one of the spikes. Looking at the bottom, he says that was dangerous and he nearly died from a simple mistake, so he needs to proceed carefully. But someone taps him on the shoulder, telling him the exit is just below. Startled, he turns and attacks with his club, asking who it is. A stranger falls onto another spike and the protagonist shouts, asking who he is. Harvey, the level 28 archer, calls him hot-headed and says he shouldn't have been so sudden, but he points out that he could have ripped out Bai's heart and Bai wouldn't have had time to react. Our hero asks again who he is and why he appeared behind him so suddenly. He remembers that this is the corpse that was at the bottom of the abyss with him, and asks if he's also a reborn. The armored man smiles and moves in a bizarre way, saying that Bai can't help it if he's facing someone who was reborn as a level 28 elemental archer. He says the protagonist is irrelevant, not even worth killing, as he appears behind him, delivering a slash to his torso, leaving him paralyzed, weakened, and with half his life gone. Bleeding, the protagonist asks why he's attacking, considering they are both reborn and should be helping each other. The man questions if the system hasn't already warned him about the danger other reborn represent, and it made him lose hope in the kid. Our protagonist attacks back, saying he won't believe his lies. The archer's smile breaks Bai's weapon, and he says that in exchange for showing him the way, he won't kill him, but if Bai survives or not depends solely on him. Jumping backward, he laughs, saying Bai can seek revenge if he wants. The protagonist asks the system what's hiding about the reborn, and the system says it never hid anything, just that the information was locked, and with these last 3 events, new details can be revealed. First, everyone hated the reborn and saw them as beings of extreme malice, and the reasons for this are locked. Reborn is the term used to refer to beings who came back to life, but not exclusively humans, and the reason for that is yet to be unlocked. Being reborn is random, with higher-level reborn recognizing lower-level ones. With the exception of no class, all other classes have initial information about the reborn but can obtain special information by progressing in class. While falling, he asks why he was only warned about this now and comments that this world is very chaotic. He grabs onto one of the spikes and swings to another, saying that despite everything, he can't give up and that he won't waste this rebirth, knowing he's almost at the end of the cave. He throws himself backward, deciding to ignore the pain even though it's unbearable, and bounces off several spikes before hitting the ground, his health dangerously low. A green liquid is nearby, and he says he just needs to crawl a bit to get out of this hell. He hears a sound and smells something strange, and upon seeing it, he realizes it's a rare monster, a toothed worm, and says that it shouldn't be there. Bai remembers that a monster like this shouldn't exist near this exit and wonders why it's there. Our hero plans to take advantage of the monster's sluggishness, but it starts to split into several smaller monsters. He wonders how it entered its second phase and why it's happening in a place like this, which should be impossible. But he recalls something. What if the Colgate Smile guy lured the monster to kill him? This realization suggests that his chances of dying just increased. The smaller monsters charge at him. He dives into the Green River, saying that he's fought enough battles to not be underestimated. Our hero screams in pain, confirming that the river is acidic due to years of pollution. As his skin melts, he thinks that his sheer willpower will keep him alive. Despite the acid dissolving down to the bone, our protagonist still has more flesh than the monsters. He drags himself through the toxic river toward the exit, thinking that he won't live with regrets and frustrations again. Our protagonist had thought he would be accepted into society if he got into an important school in the capital, so he left his village and his mother. They complained to him, even while he washed dishes. They tell him at night they would beat him if he kept studying with all that light. He managed to get into his dream school, but then his mother was diagnosed with a terminal illness, so he dropped out, feeling his world collapse because he couldn't save her. And even as he tried his best, people still mistreated him. He started streaming and made a living from it, eventually becoming famous for a certain game, but he died before reaching his full potential. Floating through the river's acid, he says he won't accept dying like last time. He'll live in this world he knows so well, but he thinks that just being reborn here to die pathetically is ridiculous and starts to rise. He jumps out of the acidic river, declaring that he won't die like that and will become the king of this world. With his last few health points, he manages to reach the exit and earns one account unlock point, choosing to unlock items from his old account with 25% of the original attributes. He's bitten and attacked by all the monsters, but a green light surrounds him. He uses Sacred Blood Essence, equips the Bloody Shadows set, and then the Scarlet Assassin's dagger slicing through all the monsters, saying he'd warned them that defeating him wouldn't be easy, because the true king of the world should act like it, and now he's at an additional level of 30, with his health restored. The monsters scream and rush toward him, but our protagonist lunges forward, slicing them all in one go. As the monster's blood splatters, he says he made the best choice, as his inventory is completely filled with various precious items, and that now his true story begins. He cleans his daggers, and the monsters tremble with fear, but begin to merge again. The reformed monster roars at him, and he simply asks why it's doing that. The system informs him that if he defeats this monster, he'll earn 3 soul points. He throws his swords into the air, pleased with this information. Holding his daggers, he says that this recompense is just what he wanted, and he slams his swords together, activating a skill called Scarlet Fireworks, causing them to ignite in flames. As he rushes toward the monster, he says that their battle is about to begin. The monster roars at him, and our hero charges forward, circling around it while attacking, knowing all its movement patterns, cutting its flesh deeply. He says he's going to give back double the pain this monster caused him. The monster roars from the effect of the Scarlet Burn, which causes damage for 15 seconds, and the debuff of Supreme Pain that extends to the bones, screaming at Bai as he leaps through the air, enduring the pain. But our hero creates 2 clones and says he's going to help ease the monster's suffering, with several clones hovering in the air thanks to the Shadow Assassin skill that multiplies his body and mind. They all rush at the monster and attack with a vertical slash. As the monster is destroyed, it lets out a final scream, and the system informs the protagonist that he's earned 18,000 soul points as a reward for defeating the monster, along with the achievement, the one who wields light burns hotter than a flaming torch. Landing on the ground, he gains 8 levels and considers it a great result, acknowledging that in this game it's pretty difficult to level up, and he even did a stream explaining what it takes to level up. The system tells him he received 108 gold, 2 dirty crystal bottles, and a skill called Piercing Prayer of Suffering. Bai says he was lucky to get the prayer on his first try and notes that even with item bonuses and at max level, agility is still the most important stat to increase. He then looks at the items he can unlock in the future but becomes frustrated, realizing he's far from unlocking the other items. He recalls that besides the assassin set, he also has 2 others. A draconic warrior set with a sword called Dragon Spine, and a mage set called Prophet of the Starry Skies, along with the staff Lantern of Deep Space. He wonders if he should return to save the princess. But as a reborn, it's not going to be easy, and he questions how much the game is altered by the reborn and if there are other things he doesn't know about. Thinking it's not the best idea to wander alone as a reborn, and considering that by helping the princess, her followers might later help him, preventing them from trying to kill him, he realizes he can now defend himself if necessary. He then decides to go back, leaving a pile of monster corpses behind him. Fighting more and more monsters on his way, he places his hand on the ground using a skill called Piercing Prayer of Suffering, and remarks that only the boss is left, with the system congratulating him for reaching level 10 and unlocking the reputation system. He checks his reputation with the princess and sees that it's hostile. He notes that this wasn't in the original game. Bai makes a worried face, realizing they might not be happy with his earlier decision. The group discusses how the kid dared to leave them and mention that because they're reborn, they only care about themselves. The princess takes the blame, saying that if she were stronger, they wouldn't be in this situation. The group tells her not to blame herself and that they've sworn loyalty to her, only arguing because the dream of restoring the country might have been shattered. Just as they were about to say something else, something cuts the rope that bound them. As they fall, they prioritize protecting the princess, landing safely. The furry Satin says he won't die today. The knight Hashi checks on the princess, who says she's fine. The elf asks who's there and if they've come to help or kill them. Our hero tells them not to worry because even though they've insulted him, he's still better than them. They recognize his voice. Removing his hood, the protagonist reminds them that he was going to come back to save them and tells them to prepare because the boss will arrive in 1 minute, surprising everyone in the group. While he's cutting the ropes around the princess, the rest of the group can't understand why he's saving them. The princess says she owes him a great debt, but Bai responds that the best favor they can do is to get out of there. The other 3 in the group get annoyed with the protagonist over his insolence, and the furry one tells him to kill him first. Bai pulls his hood up after his provocation takes effect, saying they can do whatever they want, but they'll never defeat the boss. The princess tells them to stop being emotional in this situation, and drawing her staff, she orders everyone to get into combat mode. With everyone ready, the princess says that now they have hope and need to keep going. The protagonist thinks the princess's personality hasn't changed and that they don't seem to mind that he's reborn. With 10 seconds left, the protagonist sets a storm trap that will trap and paralyze the target when triggered. As he vanishes, he asks everyone to hold on for 3 minutes, leaving them confused about his plan. Something drops from above in their direction and lands on the ground in front of them, causing them to realize that the protagonist perfectly predicted the boss's arrival. The boss, Maudit the Blood Axe, grumbles that food shouldn't run away, and now he'll personally cook them. Without realizing it, he steps on the protagonist's trap, Lightning engulfs the boss, causing him to scream in pain, while the group marvels at how the protagonist predicted exactly where he would step, but they decide to ignore it, since they have the advantage. The princess orders them to focus their attacks on the boss. The boss attacks them, exclaiming how dare ingredients like them rebel, but the knight blocks the blow. Suddenly, the boss notices arrows flying toward him, and while defending, he comments that it's a good trick. Also seeing plants coming his way, wondering if they intend to keep insulting him with gimmicks instead of using their real abilities. Cutting through the plants, he says these tricks could never restrict his movements. The boss attacks, and the knight dodges, and the monster says that was the right choice for a coward like him. Creating a spinning tornado, the monster declares he's going to leave them merely dead so they can savor their own despair. Protected by the princess's magic, they think that dodging is impossible with this attack, and that they need to strategize since the princess can't hold out for long. The princess says she can hold out, but that they can't afford to get hit by these attacks, and she casts another spell. The boss reaches the princess, saying she's the most delicious part of this group of ingredients and attacks, but the knight protects her, breaking his shield in the process. Preparing for another attack, the boss calls them pathetic and asks how they plan to defend against his next strike, but suddenly he screams in pain. Looking back, our protagonist had attacked him, saying he just added a little seasoning to the mix. The protagonist used poison on his daggers derived from the river's acidic water. Furious, the monster declares that he's not fit to be an ingredient, and while dodging, the group wonders if it's normal for a level 10 to be this effective. The boss clutches his back and says that this acidic poison is lethal to his race, and asks how the protagonist knew that. Angry, the monster strikes the ground, creating red cracks, and says this human will pay for making him look so pathetic. The cracks spread toward a pile of corpses, while the group urges each other to take advantage of the boss's moment of weakness, but our hero tells them not to go, and suddenly the pile of corpses explodes and the dead awaken. He mentions that the boss entered Phase 2 and can now control the dead. The protagonist shouts for them to deal with the zombies while he takes on the boss, and the group calls him crazy. The princess shouts for them to listen and handle the zombies, and they understand. The boss tells the protagonist he's brave despite being low level and says he's gotten used to the pain. Bai thinks his plan is going as he intended, but now, with the poison lasting only 1 minute, he must kill the boss within that time. The boss grins at the protagonist's contemplative looks, saying that instead of thinking about how to beat him, he should focus on not becoming ground meat. Activating his flame skill, the protagonist says it's not a bad idea to be turned into ground meat and charges at him, stating that he's going to be only ground meat here. Bai, using the knight class, ended up dying from one of the boss's strikes, and as a mage, he met the same fate. He died 30 times before defeating the boss, who was known for his thick skin and flesh. The boss lunges and attacks the protagonist, who dodges directly. At his current level, the protagonist could withstand only 2 hits, but he has enough agility, so he just has to wait for the poison to push the boss into its 3rd phase. The boss mocks the protagonist for saying he would turn him into ground meat, then launches a stone attack at him. While in the air, Bai skillfully dodges the attacks. The princess, watching the protagonist, thinks he doesn't seem like a novice, but rather an experienced veteran. The monster figures out the protagonist's plan and says it's all about dodging while the poison weakens him. The boss, entering his 3rd phase, raises his axe using the skill Blood Rain and asks who will die first. Attacking, the monster says there's no more place for our hero to hide and strikes his leg with a blow of blood. No matter how fast the protagonist is, even dodging, it's almost impossible to escape the 3rd phase attacks without taking damage. The group considers helping the protagonist, but they're too busy. The monster charges, saying his next attack will finish him off. Attacking and hitting, he realizes the protagonist has disappeared using the Shadow Thrust skill. Looking back, he sees the protagonist advancing and wonders if he teleported and how someone at that level had such a skill. The protagonist says that the key isn't to gain distance for an attack, but to use close-range strikes, which he does, stabbing the monster in the waist with his dagger. Bai thinks the best strategy in the 3rd phase, when the boss's defense drops, is to attack with everything, wondering if the boss can withstand this assault. Screaming, the boss asks why the protagonist hit him from behind, saying it hurt a lot. The group is surprised to see the monster yelling in agony. Furious, the boss attacks our hero, who avoids the hit, but still takes some damage, leaving him with half his health. Our hero charges again and, using his clones, delivers multiple strikes to the boss. The monster launches an area attack, pushing the protagonist away, saying he never thought someone like him would cause so much trouble. Irritated, the boss says he spent a lot of time gathering valuable items, and now he has to use them on someone insignificant like him. The boss uses a life-draining rune and summons zombies to recover his health, and the protagonist thinks this is bad. Surprised, he wonders how the boss suddenly has these abilities, knowing it's another critical difference from the original game. Someone uses a skill called Forgotten Barrier to interrupt the boss's life recovery. The princess shouts for everyone to stop focusing on the zombies and concentrate on the boss to defeat him in a single blow. The monster blames her and charges, shouting that she should have been the first to die. The group panics as they're held by the zombies, worrying about the princess. Our protagonist arrives just in time to block the monster's strike, but ends up with dangerously low health. The girl screams his name and apologizes, worried about him. Breaking a room, our hero regains his HP and says it was his fault for letting her get into danger. Angry, the monster asks how long he will keep being a problem for him. Our hero prepares and says this last strike will decide who lives or dies. Impressed and afraid, the monster senses that the protagonist's bloodlust is greater than his own. The monster starts to flee, saying he'll spare them today, and everyone is surprised to see him running away. The zombies fall dead on the ground. The group gathers around the princess, apologizing for putting her at risk, but she says it's okay since everyone survived. But the protagonist chases after the boss, saying it's not over. But the princess says it's best they leave while they still can. Our hero says he has another perspective, and using the shadow formation skill, he declares that this boss must die, and then he attacks him with his clones, finishing him off. Everyone in the group levels up. The protagonist gained 320 gold coins and 15,000 soul points, leveling up twice, saying he surpassed the toughest level in that cave. The system informs him that Bag Key obtained the Blood Dance Axe, the Book of Body Manipulation, and a blood suction capsule. The princess thanks him, saying she owes him a favor, but the protagonist reminds her that it's 2 favors since he saved her twice, and they'll discuss it once they leave the cave. The protagonist realizes that all these problems occur differently from the game, and that he needs to learn more to avoid being. The group approaches the protagonist and says that he suddenly seems like a completely different person. Hashi apologizes for his previous misconduct towards the protagonist, admitting that he is a true hero. The system informs him that his reputation with Princess Muina's group has drastically increased to a debt of gratitude. The protagonist thinks this is the most favorable time to gather information and states that he's a reborn whom everyone wants to kill, but they seem unfazed by it. The princess says he's special and that they, too, are targets like him, aside from having been helped earlier by another powerful reborn. Bai is surprised and asks who his other reborn is. He asks the princess to tell him more about this other reborn, saying he's interested in others like him. She responds that it's not ideal to talk in this place and that the best option is to discuss while walking. The elf remarks that they can finally rest a bit, but the princess reminds them to be careful of the other monsters in the cave. She says she needs to recall some things before explaining about this person. Reborn are people who return to life with special abilities and are usually cruel and act unconventionally, almost as if they're from another world. No one cared until a prophecy emerged that said the world would collapse and the reborn would reunite and restore it, but the nation saw them as heretics. However, the former reborn who helped them was powerful and kind without the mocking aura that most have. The princess says the protagonist is quite similar to him. She mentions that knowing them made everything more precious, but that his fate is dark due to the hate everyone feels and will feel toward him. But she tosses him something, saying it's for him. When he catches it, he realizes it looks familiar. The princess explains that it was given by the reborn, and the protagonist sees that this dagger can hide his true identity from others. The protagonist is impressed with the dagger's attribute, saying he's never seen anything like it. The princess suggests he should use it since it can conceal his identity and help him find its previous owner. The group protests, saying the princess can't give something so powerful to him, and that she's putting herself at risk, but she insists that it's her choice, and she doesn't want objections. Our hero initially thinks he got this because of his reputation, but he disagrees, realizing she's always been a good person and notes that she's not truly destined for the throne. As the last of her lineage, the princess should have lived a life where everyone in the royal family revered her. However, the breaking of the soul crystal caused a massive imbalance. Although there was no life on the alien spacecraft, it still caused mutations in the planet's life forms, leading to an apocalyptic crisis. The Star Kingdom went to war against the mutants, but eventually they ran out of resources and started to crumble. The Star Kingdom and its 8 lords kept one part of the soul crystal, and that was 100 years ago, and now she's the last of her lineage. The princess is viewed as a rat at the table by the 8 rebellious nations, yet she still wants to embark on a difficult path to restore her kingdom. Glory asks why Bai is so deep in thought, saying that all these bodies along the way were his doing before he came to save them, and that it's best not to make him their enemy. The furry one points toward the exit, disappointed that he didn't die this time. The princess runs ahead, telling him to hurry because they successfully made it out. She gets outside and is briefly blinded by the light, and everyone looks at the landscape and the setting sun. She opens her arms, saying it's been a long time since she felt the sunlight and that the feeling of freedom is incredible. Everyone is happy to finally be out of the cave, saying they're finally free. The princess says she wants to express her gratitude again, stating that there's nothing to repay for his help, but the protagonist replies that the dagger is more than enough and asks about their next destination. Bai already knows his next destination, but it's better to ask to avoid suspicion. The elf tries to conceal the answer, saying it's something important, but Hashi says there's no harm in telling the truth to their savior. The princess agrees, saying it's only embarrassing to say out loud. They previously hired some mercenaries who betrayed them and took something very important from the princess. The protagonist knows they took the Star Core, which is an important symbol of the Star Kingdom lineage, but it's also an extremely important item in the game. The princess says it's because of her weakness and naivety that she was blinded by their lies. Hoshi gets angry and punches the wall, saying that they're weak and guilty for not protecting her or her item. The other two explain that their weakness is only one of the reasons and that despite everything, the traitors hid their intentions well. Mina, looking sad, says they need to find them even if it means going to hell. The protagonist says she doesn't need to go that far and that he already knows where they are, asking if they believe him. The group shouts, asking how he knows this, saying it's even a bit suspicious. The princess remains silent, processing. The protagonist asserts that he's not kidding because he's never lied to them, right? This is true, and the group considers that they might not have succeeded without him. The girl admits that they still have some doubts about him and apologizes, but also says it's a relief since she was prepared for the worst. Bai puts his hands on her shoulders and says he can't explain why, but he knows where the group of mercenaries is and all they need to do is follow him. The princess gives a cute smile, saying she believes him. Hashi says you shouldn't have physical contact while talking to a woman, and Glory points out that the princess didn't complain, so they shouldn't interfere. The burning jungle is in a perpetual state of flame, but it has a surprisingly balanced ecosystem. However, you have to be careful with the red fire spiders. A red lizard chases after a small creature and chomps down on it, blood dripping from its mouth. It turns around alert but ends up getting skewered, and someone comments that this place isn't for humans and that they're being cooked alive, but at least these lizards taste good when fried. This is the group of mercenaries with 30 members ranging from levels 20 to 30. The group wonders why they have to stay in that place, and the boss mentioned they should, but even the fire mages are tired of the heat. The silent leader approaches. His name is Hedis, and he's level 30. One of the underlings mentions that he seemed dazed after picking up this necklace and asks about his story. Hedis says he's just being cautious, but admits he's starting to regret not having killed them from the beginning. The underlings say they've probably been devoured by now, and it's their own fault for not accepting the leader's kindness. The captive princess says he's truly evil and asks why he betrayed her when she trusted him so much. He says it's not contradictory, it just depends on the reward they're going to get and that they're actually helping them. The leader says that with his help, her kingdom could be rebuilt within a few years. She just needs to give him her necklace and become his wife. But the princess responds that he can do whatever he wants with her, but the necklace is more important than that. He says she's a stubborn woman who doesn't know how to value her life, then asks if she can bear watching her loyal servants being killed, causing her to grit her teeth and tremble. Putting on the necklace, he says people like her don't deserve to live in this world and orders a visit to Enka village the following day. The bearded man says that now that they're leaving, they can finally restock the group, adding he's tired of the women in their group. He grabs one of the women and takes her inside, while the mage comments that he has so much energy he can't sit still for a moment. The mage asks what the boss plans to do with the necklace, suggesting they sell it to another country to avoid problems. The leader agrees, saying he was considering selling it to the nearest kingdom, the Alina Duchy, but they're too poor, suggesting they sell it to Hades Earldom, which has much more money. Hades Earldom is rich in mountains and mineral resources, with excellent blacksmiths and a powerful army. The Alina Duchy is abundant in crops and flowers, with excellent painters and designers. Wembak Earldom has dense forests and hunting grounds with excellent hunters and carpenters. The leader explains that this necklace contains an essence of war that has never been altered and was inherited by an orphan, saying its value surpasses all the benefits of war. An underling, scared, asks if this necklace's power is really that great and why not use it for some fun, but the leader says that after some research, it's just a gem with no inherent power. Smiling, the white-haired man tells him to forget it if he wants to stay alive. The leader says it's not about power. It's better to live happily with enough money, nothing more, and the underling agrees, asking how he knows so many secrets. The leader smiles and says he doesn't need to know. Besides, tomorrow they're going to make a big move in Anka village, so it's best to inform the others. The group thinks they're foolish to stay there, but also cautious, and if Bai Kai hadn't killed the guards, everyone would be on high alert. The princess notes that they have the advantage in numbers and levels, so how could they possibly have a chance to retrieve the necklace now? Hashi says it's suicide to go in with so many people, and the furry suggests distracting them, but the elf says that's idiotic, and that it's better to wait until night. Bai says they don't have time after all. During the next patrol, they'll notice the guards are missing. The princess acknowledges that he has a sharp mind, so she says they need to look for another opportunity, and the protagonist says they have a chance. The group says he's unbelievable and asks him to explain his plan. Smiling, Bai claims that the disadvantage in numbers can be easily resolved and mentions that there's a nest of red flame spiders in the forest, ranging from levels 10 to 20. He says that the first part of the plan is to enter the nest safely and try to attract as many monsters as possible. He also mentions that they should direct the monsters toward the mercenaries to reduce their numbers, confirming that the plan is to create unexpected chaos and that the key to the plan ultimately depends on whether he can attract the red flame spider boss. The group is impressed that his idea is to draw the attention of a boss alone. If you like this video, don't forget to leave your like, share with friends who also enjoy a good adventure, and of course, subscribe to avoid missing any new content. See you next time. Bye-bye.